It's Ren and Stimpy as the Royal Canadian Kilted Yaksman. It's a brand spanking new Ren and Stimpy at a special time. Tomorrow at 7/6 Central, only on Nickelodeon.
Coming to you live from my mom's basement, this is the Animation Ambiance podcast. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Animation Ambiance podcast. My name is Eric, and right here next to me across the world is my good friend Troy.
Hello.
How are you today, Troy?
I'm good. Good. Yourself?
I am very good. So I'm actually coming off the heels of Miami. I was recently attending the KidScreen Summit, which is animators from all around the world kind of pitching their ideas and getting some, leeway into their ideas and concepts. It was really cool. Got to meet a lot of experts in the field. I got to meet a lot of people from Nickelodeon, which some experiences were better than others. And just in general, go to a lot of classes learning about, deconstructing humor in animation, which is something I'd love to talk to you about eventually on the podcast. And just a lot of really cool insight from a lot of experts in the field.
Awesome. I had a much less interesting week. I basically, I don't know, what have I been doing? Reading The Amazing Spider-Man from about back, I started at Civil War, the original Civil War line.
Okay.
Which, interestingly enough, I didn't know this, but the comic lines that started immediately after Civil War came out coinciding with the Marvel Cinematic Universe starting. And so it's kind of like the last of the original comic characters, because so many of the characters started to change to fit the more movie adaptations, just because of how well some people like Robert Downey Jr. Portray the characters and such. And so that was the last of the pure comic one, so it was kind of I didn't realize that happened right after Civil War, but it was an interesting transition, and I'm really enjoying it. But on the animation front, I just watched my first episode of Ren and Stimpy, which was interesting, to say the least. I know it's considered a classic to some, but I didn't necessarily feel that way, but I don't know. Have you ever seen Ren and Stimpy?
Yes. So I am a avid Ren and Stimpy fan. I've pretty much it's not even something I've had all my life, because it was kind of past my time. I was born in 97, and it went not off the air, but it considerably started airing less since its cancellation in 95, I believe. So I really only got into Ren and Stimpy about, I guess, when I was around 13 or 14. I discovered it by chance on YouTube, and it really baffled me and shocked me in a lot of ways, but not in the sense, gross out cartoons have become progressively more popular since Ren and Stimpy's inception, so it wasn't something that necessarily felt groundbreaking, but once I got into the animation and, the just the general layout of each story and what was put into each story, I really got passionate about it, and now it's one of my favorites in animation altogether.
Okay. Well, in that case, maybe I have to watch more than just one episode before I form any solid opinions. However, just talking about gross out cartoons and gross out humor as a whole, I can just say right off the bat, I've never been a big fan of any kind of gross out humor. I don't know what it is. I don't know if I'm squeamish or weak, or it's just not my cup of tea and such. But I know if you've ever read Mad Magazine, and such. They have quite a few like different art styles depending on what artist is drawing it. And I know there's like a couple ones who basically they specialize in gross out humor. Like every person is drawn as grotesquely as possible and such. And I honestly just like skip reading it because it's like I just don't. I don't know. It just seems gross for gross sake, and it's just not. I don't know. Like I said, I could simply be squeamish, and so I watched the first that one Ren and Stimpy episode, Stimpy's Invention, and it wasn't necessarily like super gross out humor, like nothing like I brought up in Mad, but you know it was the stuff like the bones twisting and breaking and like the nasty sounds and such, and it was like okay, that's not as bad as I was honestly expecting, but at the same time, it did nothing for me. It was the kind of felt like I don't want to say stupid for stupid's sake, because like not like stupid as in like oh I hate it, it's just stupid, but like stupid like it's meant to be stupid, like gag humor and stuff, and like the characters playing around like being dumb for the sake of dumb. And I'm not sure if I'm the one who's well dumb, but I couldn't find any nuance upon just simply first watch besides like the end when like the realization of like oh god, I'm gonna get their names mixed up. Angry Chihuahua, is that Stimpy or Ren? Shit.
Angry Chihuahua is Ren.
Okay, Ren he's always angry, but he's happy to be angry, and I'm like, oh, that's a nice message, I guess. But like other than that and stuff, there's only like 2 gags that stood out to me that is like actually funny. Where so the other one has to be Stimpy, drinking like the eyeball sweat from his goggles. That got a chuckle, and like he's like working hard with like a screwdriver, and then you realize he's like picking his nail with it. But other than that, it was like nothing elicited any reaction from me other than oh okay, I guess that was an animation. But alas, I don't know if I was looking for something more, because I read that one of his big inspirations was Bill Watterson, who is the cartoonist behind Calvin and Hobbes, the greatest man-made creation since the wheel. And so I didn't know if I was like expecting more because of that, or if I don't know what I was expecting. But I'm probably coming off as a snob, so I'll shut up and let a actual fan of the show take it away.
Nah, I understand everything you're saying. Like, I mean, I am not. I wouldn't say I'm totally into gross out either. Like, in the sense that I will not watch Big Mouth because I've watched a handful of episodes and it's just too gross and unsettling for me. But in the same sense, what I respect about Ren and Stimpy is I think it's gross out to its fullest potential because of how much is put into the artwork, how much is put into the backgrounds, how much is put into the general animation. It is the most beautiful gross show out there, I'll say that, because gross out humor has to be good in context. It's one of the reasons I really enjoy Flapjack in general. Flapjack is another one of my favorites, and it's not a pretty cartoon, but it's beautifully ugly in that sense. I think it's really execution of the gross out moments, because if kind of like what touching on what you were saying, Stimpy's Invention isn't an especially gross episode. It's more so the execution of the gross moments that are, nice looking or beautiful or funny. And kind of what you were touching on in the sense of the jokes and gags, it's more so in the execution, because gags in Ren and Stimpy I don't think are the best, but in the way they are drawn, animated, and the way each character distorts themselves to go along with whatever action is happening. Because if you read into the past of Ren and Stimpy, creator John K. would not let people repeat a face more than once, in the sense that the art always had to be fresh. They were never allowed to cycle animation. It always had to be new and groundbreaking in some way. So Stimpy's invention actually took a year to make, and I think looking at it from a surface level, it is kind of just an array of different gags and jokes. But looking at it when you kind of look into, the animation effort, the almost like tapestry paintings that are included during Stimpy's scenes in the lab, and just all the work that was put into it from animation, from animators, from layout artists, from storyboard editors. It really just makes it all pop and makes me respect how much work was put into it.
Okay, I can get that definitely, and like I said, it probably may require like another watch or something. But I want to go back a bit, and you said that he since John K was like the perfectionist and stuff, he wouldn't allow people to reuse certain scenes. Um, was it more than once or not? Because during the end there in that like dance sequence, I'm pretty sure they cycled the dance like twice in a row and such, unless they actually like had to like do that shot for shot. Like he wouldn't allow them to recycle it, and they made him like draw it identical twice. Which in that case, I can see why it made a year to make. But and like you said, the scenes in Stimpy's lab, those were cool. But then again, like I said, like towards the second part, I felt like they either recycled some shots, or I just wasn't paying attention enough, and I missed something. But I don't know, like the second time through it looked a bit the same, but I mean, I can't deny that. I mean, it looked very cool and stuff. Like, tapestry is a very good word to describe it. It was beautifully drawn and animated. But, then going back on that, like I said, this is definitely just personal preference, but I just don't like the character designs and such. I don't know what it is. I don't know what I can say. Like I said, it's probably just coming off as like I don't know, like a new critic to the show, but I I don't know, everything's too pointy. I'm coming off of bullshit excuses now to justify it, other than I just don't like it. But you brought up Flapjack. I love Flapjack too, and such, and that's a kind of, it definitely leans more on the gross out humor, and like you said, beautifully ugly, and that's a great way to describe it. But I don't know with Ren and Stimpy if there just wasn't enough there, or if there wasn't much else than simply the character designs in each shot, because it, like, in comparison to today, it is a very like bare bones animation as far as like in comparison, which that's not really a criticism. It's simply like, I get that, like, as the times go on, of course cartoons can be more and more advanced and include more things, so that's really just kind of like a sign of the times rather than a legit criticism. But when comparing it to Flapjack, I don't know if that's why I enjoy Flapjack more, I guess. But talking about the gags and such, because both shows are very gag heavy, you have to be careful, I think, when you're making gags, because it's super hit or miss. Because if the gag misses, then it immediately becomes gag for gag's sake, or gross for gross sake, or stupid for stupid sake. Or if it lands, then it becomes great and stuff. So it's super hit or miss, and I feel like there's no in between when it comes to playing around with those. And so I don't know, maybe I'm just like more a humorless stooge, and more things miss for me than land, but I feel like that's the best way to describe my outlook on the humor that Ren and Stimpy uses. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I could say this. Flapjack is definitely more story oriented. It has Each story has a clear linear path, no matter how absurd or kind of unusual it might be. It still follows kind of a three-act structure. It has consistent characters. Like Flapjack is the wide-eyed optimist. Bubby is the stern but loving guardian. Knuckles is the grouch with kind of a heart of, he's kind of just a grouch, but I don't
Candy Island.
exactly. And then there's Peppermint Larry, who is Peppermint Larry. But in general, Ren and Stimpy is kind of a gag show. If you look at the story of Stimpy's invention, it is very, very bare bones. It's, Stimpy feels bad for his friend because he's not happy and he wants to make him happy. That's kind of it. But I think it's kind of the series of how the gags are executed in, again, just the way Ren is animated, in the way that the happy helmet he wears makes him look happy, but in the same sense that he looks in deep, like, tragic pain throughout the entire sequence. And,
Oh yeah, just I hate to interject, but the one thing that I just thought of now that I liked about character design is like when he's smiling, the teeth that he shows when he's smiling are like a different color than the teeth that you always see, as if to I don't know if that's to like insinuate it's like he never smiles, so that's why these teeth are like perfectly white, where it's like the teeth that he always has like the permanent scowl and stuff, as like this smile's like super unnatural to him. I just thought like the different discoloration of those two was like a pretty good, actually really good addition to like I said, but I totally interrupted you.
oh, no, you're fine. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that point, because it, again, kind of using those designs and the fact that there are, I don't know if they ever made model sheets for Ren and Stimpy. I don't think they did, because I think they really just use the malleability. I totally just butchered that word. Um, of their designs to kind of form them into whatever they want them to be. So, like you were saying, like the perfect teeth and everything like that, it works because it's so, to their credit and so to their design, that it kind of works to build on a joke based off of something that really isn't a joke. And that's kind of Ren and Stimpy's gags in general. It's kind of a bunch of non jokes in their own obscurities that, for me, I mean, I don't think you're snobby for not enjoying the humor, because it is kind of like an acquired taste in a way, where I just really get into, like I said, the way the art reflects the humor, as well as just those absurd non-jokes, like when Ren is ironing Stimpy's underwear, which, by the way, nobody irons underwear to begin with. So it's a, it's a total non-joke there.
I missed that. Like, see, I probably missed like half the jokes.
Yeah, it's a total like non-joke in that aspect, and then he gives Stimpy the underwear. Stimpy puts it over the front of his body, but does not put the underwear on, and just walks away.
Like one of those like fuzz, like the things you buy in like Dollar Tree, where you have like the fuzzy clothes that you just put on the model and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. He like doesn't put them on his body. He just it's so absurd, and it's just little stuff like that. He puts it on his body, and the shine comes out and the sound comes on like it's a 1960s commercial. It's just those little touches that really make moments that would not otherwise be funny, like be funny, and it just really goes to show in not only the art department, but also the music department. The music, which you might have noticed, is the same music cues they use in SpongeBob and Camp Lazlo and Rocko's Modern Life.
That's where I heard him. Yep.
Yeah, it's they have like a whole production library of music where pretty much like 15 to 20 animated shows use them. But they really use it to their best ability. They use classical music. They use just general like easy listening music to really, carry across those humorous moments as well as dramatic moments. There's a couple episodes on that list of episodes I sent you of Ren and Stimpy episodes that are really dramatic in their execution, and in just their art style, their music choices, And it really goes both ways. You can find them funny, or you can really get into the drama. And I'm kind of both for both of it, and I really appreciate the work that went into, making a cartoon in the 90s, which cartoons in the 90s were relatively, or I want to say early 90s, were still relatively safe and non-daring, and I think Ren and
Batman
Stimpy.
the Animated Series begs to differ.
Yeah, you know what? I'll give you that one. Well, I want to say more so shows. I don't want to say shows aimed at children, because I think Batman the Animated Series, I mean, which is a show I haven't seen, but a show I want to see. And I know with your expertise, I will watch it eventually. Um, but in general, Ren and Stimpy is, for the most part, a comedy show, but I think it blends a lot of moments of comedy and drama that was still foreign at the time, and still, you know, brought it across relatively adult and kind of poignant in its execution. So with that being said, with Ren and Stimpy's history in mind, uh, we have been, well, it's happened in the past year or so that creator John K has gotten himself into some dirty deeds. He has been, I don't think he's been formally charged because of statute of limitations, but John K has been kind of put out in the open that he has groomed multiple girls underage, which is not good, obviously. And I mean, it's always been kind of in the know that John K is kind of a bad egg, but this really brought it out in the open that, he's kind of sick in the mind, which again might have been something already known.
Yeah, wasn't it confirmed, right, that he did have some mental disorders?
Probably. I never saw a confirmation of that, but I mean, just in general, he's always been known to be kind of a shitty person. In the sense that there's a book called the Sick Little Monkeys, the unauthorized Ren and Stimpy story that kind of, brings his insanity out in the open, and shows that, this guy has always been a maniac. But this was kind of, the turning point for a lot of people, in terms of, people always accepted that, all right, he's absurd, he's kind of, abrasive, but he's an artist, not to say that's a justification, but I still really respect him at the end of the day. But this news that has come out recently about John Kay has really been turning people off of him completely. I know people who have gotten autographs from John Kay that have just trashed them completely, want nothing to do with him, rightfully so. Want nothing to do with him, want nothing to do with anything he touches. He's probably never going to get work again, which, again, justifiably so. And yeah, just really has kind of changed his legacy entirely, and has really kind of changed outlook on the show in general. So, with that being said, do you want to touch on anything related to, uh, kind of. So there's this idea that, John Kay obviously is a predator, no good guy. Uh, people want nothing to do with him or his work anymore. Do you think, with the opinions reflected towards John Kay, it is fair to reflect those opinions towards Ren and Stimpy as well?
Okay, so that's a very tricky question and can be applied to many different forms of art, because I feel like more and more so nowadays. You have these people being outed as horrible, horrible human beings. So it's a very common question, but at the same time, it's a very hard question to answer. But I guess my outlook on the whole thing as like, can you separate content from creator is, I don't think you can. Not in an easy way, because I mean, I love history as a subject, just as like a basic Common Core subject. History is one of my favorites, and one of the things that I'm taught and that I like to go off of is you always have to take context in mind. You always have to, when analyzing a work of art, when analyzing literature or a painting or anything, or in this case a cartoon, you always have to take context in mind, whether that be historical or otherwise, because oftentimes that tells the real story behind the art that's being output. So to kind of, I mean, you have to, of course, acknowledge that the Ren and Stimpy, I feel like you have to acknowledge that Ren and Stimpy is made by, I mean, I guess it was already commonly known that he was kind of a messed up dude, a crazy guy. But at the same time, it would be almost, I don't want to say ignorant, but it would be silly to just try to completely ignore that fact that it's made by someone who is a sexual predator. And upon closer looking at a few gags, I don't know what kind of other gags were done, because, like I said, I didn't watch more than one episode. But I know, just like reading about the show, like the show could get pretty out there sometimes. So I think it could almost be used as like explanation as to why some of those gags were pushed through. But at the same time, I don't think it's wrong to stop enjoying the show, because while I don't believe you can like fully separate content from creator, I don't think it's like wrong to not still enjoy a show for what it is, while at the same time not liking who made it because of the things that they did. I don't know, it's kind of a tricky position to even say and even defend, because I know it's a bit contradictory. But at the end of the day, I think it's fine to enjoy something that was made by someone horrible if that doesn't entirely bleed through. I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, again, it's a big issue for myself personally, because, I mean, not just saying myself, but for a lot of people in general who love the show. And I mean, this goes for anything, basically. Just in the past 2 years or so, like you said, we've had a lot of, people being outed, and a lot of sick, dark histories being unturned. And John K. is just you know, one of the selection of people who have also been outed. But it's really the one that hit me the hardest, because I am such an animation junkie, and because I love Ren and Stimpy so much in general. It's the one that surprised me the least, but hit me the hardest. I always knew John K. was, again, like I said, a messed up dude. If you read the book, he like physically throws people down a flight of steps. He is just an absolute madman in the writing room. So again, this is all common knowledge, but just the revelation of this bit of history, it kind of makes me uncomfortable with knowing that I like something like this. I met Bob Camp last summer at Comic-Con. He is one of the co-creators of Ren and Stimpy, and he actually took over the show when John K. got fired. So I was talking to Bob Camp a lot about it. Bob Camp had a whole, table of Ren and Stimpy stuff set up, drawings, comic books, all kinds of stuff like that. Bob Camp is an incredibly sweet dude, really nice guy, and I was talking to him, and I was just saying, it's hard for me to like Ren and Stimpy because of what John K. did, and Bob Camp hates John K. He absolutely hates the dude. And Bob Camp was saying that it's hard for everyone, because he worked on the show. The people loved working on the show, but nobody wants to touch it anymore because it's toxic. They have thought about bringing it back in comic book form and all kinds of other ways, but it he just said it nobody wants to touch it anymore because of John K's influence. So again, like kind of like you were saying, like I still really enjoy the show, and in general, John K, I mean, I'm a cartoonist myself. John K has had a huge influence on the way I draw myself, but at the same time, I can't help but having an uncomfortable feeling just enjoying the show, being around the show when knowing like it's hard for me to separate the show from John K in that aspect.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I mean that's completely. If anything, I'll be like a therapist. That's good that you're feeling these things, because I mean, if you weren't, that's a problem. But at the same time, I mean, just like it is a tricky subject. But I mean, if so many actors nowadays are being outed for being sexual predators or assholes or whatnot, but I feel like it's I wouldn't say wrong. It'd be justified, but it's I'd rather rephrase it as it's not wrong to continue liking a movie if an actor in it was outed to be some horrible person, because that actor is just one person in the movie. No matter how big their role is in the movie is still made by plenty of other people who are completely fine and great artists and everything. And like you said, I mean, it sounds like almost everybody on the show hated being around the creator and such. So while, yeah, the creator may be a complete horrible, awful human, the rest of the people aren't. And one person can't make a show. And so I guess, I don't know, take solace in that fact or whatever, because, I mean, what was it? He got fired after 2 seasons of his own show and such. Yeah. And so, I mean, the majority of the show wasn't even really made by him. And so, I guess, he got separated from it early. And so, that's why it's fine to enjoy it or whatever. Like I said, I can't speak personally from it because I only saw 1 episode of the show, and when I did, I was with the full knowledge that who the guy John K was. But I mean, like you brought up before, it was also made by Bob Camp. Bob Camp had a huge part in it, and he sounds like an awesome person. So I don't know.
Yeah, and it kind of is in that same vein. Like, even if I don't have trouble, even if I allow myself to be like, all right, I can still enjoy this, it still is, I mean, kind of reiterating myself, but it really is hard to separate art from the artist, in the same sense that anytime there is a sexual innuendo of any kind, I will be reminded of John K being a huge pervert. Oh. In the same sense that I don't. Have you ever seen American Beauty with Kevin Spacey?
No, but I definitely know what Kevin Spacey did.
Yeah, yeah, of course. And I mean, the whole plot of American Beauty is Kevin Spacey, falls in love with somebody underage. And I don't think, like, I don't see the enjoyability in that movie anymore because it's too close to home, Yep. You can, because I can still watch Kevin Spacey movies, but just in that sense, it's something that's too close to home that just it makes it too uncomfortable and too irredeemable. Where Ren and Stimpy isn't entirely like that. Like you were saying, a majority of the show was not actually made by John K. Though I will say, it does make me feel a little bit worse because I prefer the John K. era to the non-John K. era. I'm really taking myself in a hole right now. But yeah, I mean, there's that factor as well. But in general, it is just uncomfortable to see a lot of those innuendos and experience them and kind of be reminded of this constant fact that, this guy is a pedophile. How do I, justify uh kind of my enjoyment of the scene, or can I even enjoy the scene anymore? And I mean, it really. Have you Do you watch The Loud House?
No, I don't think I've ever heard of it.
So The Loud House is a recent Nicktoon. I think it came out in 2016. That might be too early. It might have been like 2015 or 14, something like that. But the creator Chris Savino, I barely watched The Loud House. The creator Chris Savino was fired for accounts of sexual harassment and uh just being aggressive in general, and the show has continued since then. Still has a huge fan base. Actually is going to have a movie on Netflix. So I was just kind of curious as to how Loud House fans perceive that. So if you guys are listening to this right now, you can leave a comment below. But yeah, just in general, it is, again, with that added thing of the what people see and remember from Ren and Stimpy in general is mostly the John K era. And this is no diss to Bob Camp, because I think he's a totally talented dude. I think he's generally a much better and nicer person overall. But just in general, knowing this factor, it's hard to go into every episode still and seeing kind of insanity on your screen and thinking about insanity as a result.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I feel like that probably should be the reaction, but I mean, I don't know. I'm just trying to think of other examples. I mean, there's plenty of evidence. Or I shouldn't say evidence, because at this point it's probably more of like an internet trend than anything. But the whole thing about Dr. Seuss being an asshole to his dying wife.
Oh yeah,
and stuff. But I mean, like, Dr. Seuss books are everywhere and such, and I mean, probably read your kids Dr. Seuss and stuff. That's not a turnoff, but I mean, that's probably not a big. That's not as, I don't know. Maybe it's as big as being a sexual predator, cheating on your dying wife with cancer. But who am I to say?
Well, it really is. I mean, just to add to that, no mean to interrupt. But just in general, like, people are still. I mean, it's been heavily denied, so I wasn't there. I didn't know him, so I don't know. But it's still the implication and the theories are still out there that Walt Disney was anti-Semitic, and that those are still thoughts that exist to these days. I don't know if it's still true, but it really doesn't make anybody like Disney any less, or some people it does, but yeah.
Yeah, but they're still gonna probably take like what 99% of the box office this year with the powerhouse that.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, like you said, that's basically done nothing against them, and was it the same allegations against Henry Ford? I mean, Ford's still trucking. No pun intended. Joking about horrible people. So yeah, I mean, So I guess it just depends and such, but there's definitely no shame in looking at something different because of what the creator's done. And it's honestly just an unfortunate hole that the creators dug themselves for their legacy. And the old, your past will always come to bite you in the ass, especially in this day and age where everything's recorded online. So, I guess, yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's really hard to just come to any kind of conclusion in terms of, because I don't think there is any answer in the sad way, because, I mean, I kind of expected to, eventually move on from just this ideology in my head that, a rapist created this, but it really is just difficult to move on from that fact, and I don't think there ever is a full separation. I at the same time, I want to encourage everybody to still enjoy, art and creations as they are, because like you said, there are so many talented people who worked on Ren and Stimpy besides John K. There's Bob Camp, who is one of the nicest in the industry I've ever met. And just so many people, from Ren and Stimpy actually work on current present day SpongeBob, and lend their talents to SpongeBob, and it's looked better than ever, I think.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Just animation quality and everything. And it's really just, I guess, coming to terms with and accepting the fact that, you know, this was created by John K, but at the same time, there are so many other people that you can admire. And even if you are admiring John K's art, it's acknowledging that, you know, I guess, like you said, if you feel bad, you at least aren't completely far gone from what you expect you are.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, yeah, like I said, I can't necessarily talk about it on a personal level because I think I've been lucky enough that not too many of like the people that I hold on a pedestal have been brought down, but I know every time Harrison Ford's name gets trending in the news, I have a heart attack. I'm like, ah, Jesus Christ, not him too. No, he's just crashed a plane again. So I just got lucky there a couple times, but yeah, I mean, I know I'd be devastated if someone like Harrison Ford or Bill Watterson were to be revealed to be someone like John K. I'd be absolutely demolished and such. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm just talking out of my ass here about, oh, it's okay, you'll get over it. Maybe it's okay to feel these things, because I'd cry into a pillow for weeks. So yeah, I don't think I have much else to say on that.
Yeah, it's certainly devastating, and I think for a lot of people, it's, you know, even after a year of announcement, it's still hard. Like, recently I just bought a Ren and Stimpy animation cell, and about like the next day or so, I kind of just laid in my bed like, what have I done? So yeah, it's always going to be a tough, road to follow when you get into that stuff, but I think as long as, you kind of look at it from, I want to, sit down and enjoy this piece of art regardless of its creator, and all that. It's not easy. It might not even be possible, but I think at the end of the day, it is something that, we're just gonna have to do to move on in, how society is going even to this day.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunate circumstance.
Yeah. Sad podcast.
Sad face.
So that about wraps up our coverage today. Thank you once again for joining in for the Animation Ambiance podcast. We have lots more ideas to come, so tune in next week. My name is Eric, and
my name isn't. We'll see you next week.
We'll see you guys next week. Thanks for joining us.